Good evening, good afternoon, good day, whatever time it is. Hello, my name is Alex Weir, and this is another installment of Oddit, or Oddit for short, which is the official podcast of the Fractal Journal. So today there's kind of a host of topics I want to talk about. It's going to be a bit meandering, but bear with me. Okay, so last night I tried to make a video about this tough talk, all this hot air that goes around from people that are pundits on the internet as well as radio and television. And, of course, I am subscribed to Paul Joseph Watson, many of whose points I agree with. But I think that he, in some ways, is a very good indicator for the sort of nonsense that has come into vogue recently. And I think that he got there because he was competing in a field of very loud and obnoxious sorts. In fact, he said that he is kind of quiet and contemplative by nature, which I'm not going to contest him on. But he recently made a video about depression with a fellow who's a boxer, a champion boxer. And it was just really the epitome of tough talk, a bit nonsense. See, I'm a bit reluctant to make this. It's one of those things that's, because there are good points, legitimate points that were made by those parties, I don't want to denigrate them or degrade them, but at the same time, there was also just a lot of very, very hot air, which I feel is detrimental. I do absolutely believe and agree that the pharmaceutical industry definitely does people a disservice by making them feel helpless without the products, by pushing their products as a panacea solution. But when you basically imply that people who complain or who are not succeeding in life are just pansies that need to toughen up, that's not helping the situation. Even if that's not what you mean, that's exactly how you've come off as. And yeah, it's gross. It's just as gross as when a pharmaceutical company tells people that they're helpless. A guy that punches people for a living, and then two ranty journalist types yelling at people about how they need to go out and just conquer, and if you're not succeeding, well, that's your fault. And to an extent, it always is your fault if you're not succeeding, but how much of it is your fault? I think that all things are complicated and a matter of degree. For instance, if you're trying to walk up a hill and somebody runs down the hill and constantly kicks you in the nuts as you're making the ascent, that makes things a little bit more complicated, and you might get a little bit ticked. And then if it keeps happening and there's nothing you can do about it, after a bit you might get kind of depressed. Of course, this is a hyperbolic, silly example, but the point of it is that you can't just blow hot air at people and talk about stoicism and all of these ideals of masculinity or call to action or virtue. This was all just sheer virtue signaling. Look at what I've done. I'm a great journalist reaching lots of people. Look at what I have done. I'm an amazing boxer. Literally, I went to that fellow's Twitter and it was all gloating, which he's a boxer. Fine, great, fantastic. But not everybody is a boxer. And one of the things he said really stuck in my craw. Oh, it's because people have a hard time concentrating, and that's why, it's your fault. Well, why are the people having trouble concentrating to where they're not succeeding in their field of endeavor? Probably for a host of reasons, one of which might be the fact that people are constantly poking fun at them for not being able to concentrate enough. You see, first of all, their field might be a little bit more difficult and less clear-cut than chess or boxing. Like, say, writing a book, or, say, learning to program a computer, or starting some kind of a disruptive business that disrupts current industry. It's kind of a buzzword, but I'm just going with it for now. And that's the point is there's not like a gym or a dojo that you can go to and train really hard, and then you get feedback on what's effective and what's not. There's a lot of variables at play. And I understand the spirit of the message. It's a good one. That's why I'm kind of like, I I don't know if I should comment or not, but I think that I should. Because there's just too much of this empty tough talk, and then it gets out into the zeitgeist, and people start using it on each other, and it just degrades relations between people and keeps people from having successful business practices and interpersonal relations. Because if everybody is constantly being some kind of badass coach, boxing guru type, or telling each other to toughen up, they're not solving problems. They're preening. They're preening about how stoic they are and how stoic you should be. And I don't find that good. And it's not even the fact that I don't find it good. It's the fact that it's not good. That's another thing, is there's ways to kind of look at a problem. You don't necessarily have to have, provide me a real world example. It's good, but you can also just provide, well, this is kind of just the logical thing that has happened. You can deduce from an axiom that a behavior of a certain stripe is not good. Talking in hot air, picking on people for getting sad or depressed is just silly. And I know that's not really what they're advocating, but it might as well be. Just because of the tone and the tenor and the way I've seen it play out in interpersonal relationships, that particular mentality. Now, everything they said about the need for willpower and the pharmaceutical industry having nefarious, intentions, as well as the fact that the culture of, oh, woe is me, I can't do anything. Yeah, it is cancerous, but the solution to it is not what they're proposing. It's just not. I mean, some of what they're proposing, yes, but I think that by now everybody knows what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to segue into the next topic, which, as I said, one of the main problems is they simplify things and then they create a simplistic solution. And the world is just not beholden to simplicity, because most everything is very multivariate and very complicated. And that means you have to take a nuanced view, calm down, and just understand that you're not going to understand. And you have to take information as it comes. So an example of this is I'm reading Alex Perdome's book, The Ripple Effect, and in it he's talking about the other greenhouse gas. So everybody's always going on and on about carbon and such. Well, one person who was very involved in the USGS, Bob Hirsch, is a bit, frustrated with that, because it takes away from other problems like nitrogen. We use a lot of nitrogen as fertilizer, and when it washes off into water systems and gets into, like, say, the Chesapeake Bay or the Gulf of Mexico, it causes eutrophication, which is kind of like algae growth, and cuts off oxygen to plants below because there's no sunlight, photosynthesis, etc. And then when the plants die, it can't support animal life, and therefore creates a dead zone. And so one of the things that had fueled this was back when they were having all their ethanol and corn grown, all of the fertilizer and other nutrients and things get washed into the water, into the Gulf of Mexico, and they're fearing that it's going to be an area that's 9,000 miles wide of a dead zone. And part of the contribution is this dubious solution to an energy problem of ethanol. So there we go. There's a simple patch that they try to put on a complicated problem of pollution, and they ended up not really solving a problem, but kind of offsetting it, kind of sweeping something under the rug. And these things are not talked about. That's the other thing. Why aren't they talked about? Well, because we have this kind of vitriolic culture, first of all, where deeply complicated issues are discussed by pundits who either do tough talk or do little mewling, woe is you, come on, let's go to our safe space talk dichotomy, as well as just focusing on sensational stories like there is carbon or there is no carbon problem, blah. So then a person who presents or tries to present kind of a measured view is not given the time of day, but also it's just, there's so much that it's difficult to find what to pay attention to, which is why we all need to be more careful with how we divide our attention and what sorts of media we promote. And again, I am a huge fan of Paul Joseph Watson. I've never heard of this particular boxer before, but I kind of like the guy. And it takes all sorts. But I feel like that video was an especially good indication of the kind of mentality I'm talking about, which even with presenters and people I generally agree with, causes problems and just, yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you like what you've been hearing, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up, because that greatly helps to encourage me, as well as tells YouTube that my stuff is good. I'm going to use that little outro that Mr. Tim Pool uses, just because I think it's a good one. And I have a website called https://fractaljournal.com, where I write articles, do some interviews, and upload a lot of different kinds of content. So, hey, have a great time wherever time finds you. Goodbye.